Tonight we're setting aside fairy tales and polished myths. No gallant knights, no glittering banquets, no storybook castles with towers that catch the light. Instead, we're traveling back into a world of mud, fleas, aching bones, and lives that burned fast and dim. A world where survival was the daily occupation and comfort was as rare as a star seen through a winter storm. This ISN, the Middle Ages of films and fantasy, it is the one your ancestors actually endured, one cold morning at a time. Before we open the door and walk barefoot into the past, take a moment to get settled. Maybe dim your lights, turn on a soft fan or some background noise, and let the hum carry you. This is a journey meant to ease you toward rest, even as it walks through shadows. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel so you'll always have another story waiting for you when sleep is distant. And in the comments, let me know where you're listening from tonight and what time it is on your clock. I always love seeing how many corners of the world gather here, each of us drifting together into history. Now, let me prepare you. The world we're about to enter is familiar, and yet completely alien. You'll find no toothbrush waiting by the basin, no soft sheets pulled tight, no steaming coffee to coax you awake. Instead, you'll awake on straw that smells more like the barn it came from than a bed. You'll drink ale for breakfast because the water will kill you. And you'll go to work until your body bends, because if you don't, hunger bends you instead. It may feel harsh, but that is the truth of it. Most people in the Middle Ages didn't live as lords or knights or queens. They lived as peasants, as farmers, as workers whose days stretched from sunrise to sunset, and whose nights were filled with cold air, crowded rooms, and the constant buzz of insects that never respected privacy. So take one last deep breath in your warm room, safe in the modern world, because the moment we step through, it's gone. Congratulations, you've just woken up in the year 1325. The good news? You survived the night. The bad news? So did the lice. The first sensation isn't warmth, or comfort, or even light. It's itch. You scratch at your shoulder, then your leg, then your neck, and realize it makes no difference. The scratching isn't a cure. It's just a grim morning ritual, one that announces the start of another day. Your bed is little more than a sack of straw, if we're being generous. And if we're being honest, it's not even straw anymore. It's a flattened, damp mat that smells like mildew, barn dust, and the faint, sour perfume of livestock. Because, well, it was livestock bedding before it became yours. You roll slightly, and the whole thing creaks beneath you. The sound is less of a squeak and more of a groan, as if the bed itself is tired of being here. The blanket wrapped around you is made of wool, but wool suggests something warm, something soft. This blanket is heavy as a winter log, stiff from grime, and smells faintly like every wet season of the last 3 years. It hasn't been washed since the last frost, maybe longer, and carries a crust of history that could probably tell its own story if anyone cared to listen. There's no pillow beneath your head. A folded tunic, maybe, or a bundle of straw that pokes through the cloth and pricks your cheek. The air around you is sharp and cold, and your breath curls in little wisps, ghosting above your face. It's not dawn yet, but the church bell clangs in the distance, reminding you that the day has started whether you're ready or not. There's no snooze button. Just a sound that echoes like judgment through the valley, rattling the birds awake and telling every living soul to get up and pray, or at least to stumble toward work. Your body aches in a way that feels far older than your age. You're 22, but in medieval years, that's practically middle-aged. Your back feels like a door hinge that's been left out in the rain. Your knees grind like a bag of pebbles, and your shoulders ache from yesterday's labor. When you stretch, it's not refreshing. It's a negotiation between bones and tendons, none of them willing to compromise. The room around you is not a room in the way we think of rooms. There are no walls separating spaces, no cozy bedroom or private corner. It's one chamber, 4 wooden walls holding up a roof that leaks when it rains and groans when the wind pushes against it. The floor is dirt, packed down by years of footsteps and occasional flooding. It's uneven and cold, sometimes slick with mud when the rain comes through, sometimes crusted with something that looks suspiciously like chicken droppings. Privacy doesn't exist here. Your entire family, parents, siblings, maybe a cousin who arrived one summer and never left, sleeps within arm's reach. And that's not counting the goat that's staked in the corner, the chickens that shuffle across the floorboards as if they own the place, and the ever-present mice who dart through shadows like they're paying rent. The air carries a scent you couldn't bottle and wouldn't want to. It's a layered fragrance, a medieval perfume. Stale ale spilled last night, wool damp from the morning mist, smoke from the hearth that never quite clears, sweat, animal musk, and something sour that you can't identify, but feel certain you don't want to. Every inhalation is a gamble. Is that mold? Probably. Is that goat? Absolutely. Is that your own tunic, stewing in its own oils after months of wear? Most definitely. The soundscape is just as vivid. Chickens cluck and peck. A dog barks outside, half-heartedly guarding nothing in particular. A neighbor coughs so loudly you can hear it through the thin wooden walls, and your younger brother rolls over in his sleep, mumbling nonsense. The church bell strikes again, its hollow clang bouncing off the hills and seeping into your bones like obligation. Somewhere far off, someone's already shouting at an ox that refuses to move. And right here, beside your bed, you hear the faint scratch of lice migrating through your hair like tiny, unwelcome pilgrims. You sit up. The blanket falls away and the cold air bites immediately. You wrap your arms around yourself and hesitate before standing. Because standing means your bare feet will meet the floor. And the floor is a lottery. Sometimes it's damp, a patchwork of yesterday's rainwater dripping through the thatch roof. Sometimes it's dry, but crusted with filth. Either way, your toes are about to become acquainted with it. You lower your feet. Cold, wet, grit, it doesn't matter. Your skin tingles, your stomach turns, and you're already wishing you hadn't gotten up at all. Outside, the morning stirs. Voices call, dogs bark, the world is moving. But inside, you're still wrapped in the claustrophobic closeness of communal living. Your father stretches on the other side of the room, his back cracking like timber under strain. Your mother mutters a prayer as she rises, hair tangled, face shadowed with exhaustion. The children fumble awake, scratching, coughing, shivering. Nobody has slept well. Nobody ever does. Sleep in this world isn't rest. It's a pause in discomfort. The fire in the hearth glows faintly, a red ember clinging to life under a bed of gray ash. You crouch near it, blowing gently, trying to coax a flame. Your breath fogs in front of your face, the embers brighten, then fade. You feed it a sliver of wood, but the wood is damp, and smoke curls upward, filling the room with a bitter sting. Firewood is precious. You can't just gather it freely, not if the forest belongs to the Lord or the church. To be caught stealing wood is to risk punishment, and yet, without it, you freeze. So every log you add to the hearth feels like a small act of desperation. Your skin prickles as the room grows busier. People shifting, livestock bleating, the day rising in layers of sound. A rooster crows from outside, as if the bell hadn't already done the job. A thin light filters through the cracks in the wall, streaking across the dirt floor, illuminating dust motes that dance in the cold air. You rub your arms, trying to warm yourself, but the wool of your tunic scratches. You scratch harder, creating a cycle of irritation that never ends. Then you notice it again, the smell. Stronger now, as the bodies rise and the animals stir. Human sweat mixing with damp wool mixing with stale ale mixing with goat dung. It's a fragrance that clings, one you carry with you everywhere, no scented candles, no fresh air, unless you step outside. And when you do, the air is hardly better. The streets smell of waste, of smoke, of humanity in too close quarters. You glance around the room one more time. There are no decorations, no paintings, no tapestries, no soft touches of comfort. The only adornments are practical. Tools hanging on a peg, baskets stacked in a corner, a half-empty bucket that has its own ominous smell. This isn't a home built for beauty. It's a shelter against wind and rain, nothing more. And as you stand there, aching, itchy, chilled, and already tired before the day begins, the truth sets in. This is not just your morning. This is every morning. Tomorrow will start the same way. The day after, too. There's no escaping it, no weekend reprieve, no holiday where the straw suddenly transforms into feathers. This is the rhythm of life, and you have no choice but to keep time with it. The church bell tolls again, loud and merciless, and you take a breath. Outside, the world waits. But first, there's a more pressing matter. Nature calls. And here, in the 14th century, nature is not polite. It doesn't whisper. It shouts. And answering that call is about to remind you just how lucky you are to live in a time with plumbing. Because next comes the toilet. Or rather, the absence of one. It happens before breakfast, before you've had a chance to shake the cold from your bones, or coax the fire into a reluctant flame. Your stomach grumbles, your bladder protests, and suddenly there's no ignoring it. Nature has called, and it hasn't left a polite message. It's shouting, demanding, and it wants an answer now. You glance around your one-room hut, knowing full well that privacy is not a concept people here are familiar with. The entire family is awake, children crawling over the dirt floor, your father already tugging on his boots, your mother muttering at the embers, and the goat in the corner adding its opinion to the chaos. There's no such thing as a personal bathroom here. There isn't even a separate corner where you can disappear with dignity. The options are limited, and none of them good. If you're a peasant, as most people are, your toilet is nothing more than a wooden bucket, sitting just outside or perhaps tucked behind the hut. And by bucket, I don't mean fresh, clean, cedar-polished wood. No, it's rough-hewn, splintering at the edges, and filled with yesterday's business. And the day before's, because who wants to trudge through the mud in the dark of night to empty it? By morning, it's brimming. A communal vessel of misfortune. It smells like despair warmed by the dawn. You step outside, the air cold enough to make your eyes water, and approach it with resignation. The bucket is waiting, patient and merciless. You hold your breath, try not to look, and get it over with. The relief is brief. The smell lingers. And then comes the part that really separates this world from ours. Disposal. Because once you're done, the bucket's contents don't vanish into pipes or disappear with the push of a lever. They need to be emptied. And the designated destination? The street. Yes, the very street where you walk, where your neighbors greet each other, where children play with sticks and stones, where carts rattle past and dogs sniff curiously. Waste is flung from windows, splashed across cobblestones, pooling into shallow gutters that run through the town like grotesque streams. If you're polite, you might shout a warning before tossing it out. A cheery, "Garde a l'eau," watch for the water. A cry borrowed from Old French, a medieval courtesy that roughly translates to "move if you value your head." But warnings don't travel faster than gravity. So more often than not, someone below gets an unwanted gift from above. The streets of a medieval town aren't just streets. They're open sewers. A patchwork of mud, horse droppings, pig scat, chamber pot offerings, and substances no one bothers to identify. When the rain comes, it doesn't wash it away. It stirs it, spreads it, turns the lanes into slippery ribbons of filth. And when the sun returns, It bakes everything into a crusty, nose-wrinkling layer that never truly disappears. Shoes, if you even own them, don't keep the stench off your feet. And since most people go barefoot, the waste mingles with skin, with cuts, with scratches. You don't need a scientist to tell you where infections come from. You just need to look down. If you're lucky enough to live in a town with public latrines, the situation changes, but not for the better. These communal outhouses are long wooden benches with holes cut side by side. No partitions, no doors, no privacy. You sit shoulder to shoulder with neighbors, friends, and strangers, all of you engaged in the same humiliating necessity. Small talk isn't unheard of, though most people try to keep it brief. The stench is overwhelming, the flies are relentless, and the ventilation is non-existent. And because waste disposal here usually involves dumping straight into the nearest river, congratulations, your drinking water is officially ruined. You might think, well, surely the nobles had it better. After all, they had castles, stone walls, tapestries, and attendants. Surely their sanitation was an improvement. And in some ways, yes, it was different, but not better. In castles, you might find a garderobe, a little alcove in the wall with a hole cut through it, leading straight down the outside of the tower. At first glance, it seems clever. Your waste falls away into the moat. No buckets, no tossing, no streets involved. But then you realize two problems. One, the moat is already a festering pit of stagnant water, dead fish, animal carcasses, and other refuse. Adding human waste just ensures the stench is apocalyptic. And two, moats aren't just defensive structures. They're also weaknesses. Enemies have been known to sneak into castles through garderobe chutes. Imagine defending your stronghold, only to be overrun by soldiers climbing up through the latrine. Talk about a backdoor invasion. And what about wiping? Forget soft tissue. Forget aloe vera. Forget two-ply. Toilet paper won't be invented here for centuries. Instead, you're left with what the environment offers. Handfuls of straw, clumps of moss, leaves if you're in luck, or scraps of old cloth if you're very lucky. Sometimes it's nothing at all, which might explain why shaking hands never quite caught on during this era. The hygiene, or lack of it, shows in other ways too. Parasites thrive. Worms, lice, fleas, and worse find endless opportunities in the waste-streaked streets and unwashed bodies. The cycle is vicious. Bad sanitation leads to illness. Illness spreads easily in crowded towns. And with little understanding of germs, people keep living the same way, generation after generation. The result? Every trip to the bathroom is not just unpleasant. It's a gamble. And as you step away from the bucket, or leave the public latrine, or duck back inside from the garderobe chute, you realize something unsettling. This was normal. Nobody in the year 1325 thinks it's strange. Nobody complains about the lack of privacy or the smell in the streets. It's simply the way things are. Generations have lived and died in this cycle, accepting it as part of existence. The absurdity is invisible to them. But to you, fresh from a world of running water and porcelain thrones, it's a shock. And this is only the beginning. You've survived your morning ritual, held your breath, and tried not to slip in the mud of other people's leftovers. But there's no time to linger. The bell rings again. The day has truly begun. And before you face the endless labor ahead, there's one more trial: breakfast. A meal that promises no joy, no sweetness, and no mercy. You've braved the bucket. You've survived the streets. Now you deserve a reward, something warm, something filling, something to carry you into the grueling hours of work ahead. Unfortunately, this is the Middle Ages. The word reward doesn't exist in the morning menu. Breakfast here isn't comfort. It's an obligation, the bare minimum to keep you from collapsing before midday. Forget eggs and bacon sizzling in a pan. Forget the gentle hum of a coffee maker or the sweetness of fruit and honey. Your breakfast is pottage. Always pottage. It's less of a meal and more of a lifestyle. A stew that never ends and never begins. Pottage isn't prepared fresh each morning. Instead, a single pot sits by the fire day and night, simmering endlessly, with whatever ingredients are available tossed in as the days drag by. Barley one morning, turnips the next, maybe some beans if fortune has smiled on your household. It's not so much a recipe as it is an edible compost heap, constantly renewed but never truly reset. By now, the pot itself is coated in a layer of black soot so thick it might as well be armor. And the stew inside? Thick, gloopy, sour at the edges. A swirling time capsule of meals past. You dip a wooden ladle into the bubbling concoction, watching as chunks of grain and limp vegetables slide reluctantly into your bowl. The smell is earthy, sour, and strangely smoky, a blend that doesn't quite say food so much as something to chew. It's hot, though, and it fills your stomach. That's all that matters. Nutrition isn't calculated, taste isn't considered. Pottage is survival in a bowl, whether it tastes like turnips, onions, or despair. Beside the pottage, there's bread. At least something called bread. It's a hunk of rye or barley, dark and heavy, baked so hard it could double as a weapon. Wheat is a luxury reserved for nobles, and your loaf is padded out with whatever filler the miller decided to sneak in ground beans, pea flour, sometimes even sawdust or crushed acorns. You don't slice it so much as battle it, chipping off chunks with a knife or gnawing at it directly. Your teeth already ache from decay, so each bite is a small war. If you drop the loaf on the floor, don't worry, it won't break. The floor will. And to wash it all down? Not water. Never water. Water here is a trap. Clear, sparkling streams aren't clean. They're downstream from someone else's bucket. A mouthful of that, and you'll spend the next week doubled over, sweating through fevers, praying to survive. Instead, you drink beer. Weak ale, brewed light on alcohol, but heavy on safety, is the standard breakfast drink. Even children drink it, their little hands clutching cups of cloudy liquid that tastes more like sour bread than refreshment. It doesn't make you happy. It doesn't wake you up, but it keeps you alive. Which, in this age, is the only thing that counts. The ale is warm, never cold, and faintly bitter. You sip it, grimacing, and remember that, in the Middle Ages, luxury isn't tea about sweetness or comfort. It is about simply not dying from what you put in your mouth. Beer keeps the parasites away. Beer keeps the stomach settled. Beer keeps the village moving, even if it means everyone smells faintly of yeast and regret. What about variety? What about a bit of meat or cheese? Unless it's a feast day or your lord is unusually generous, forget it. Meat is rare, appearing only a handful of times a year for peasants. Cheese is precious, often reserved for trade or winter storage. Fruit shows up briefly in summer, rots quickly, and vanishes just as fast. Spices? Not a chance? A pinch of pepper costs more than you'll earn in a month. Cinnamon or nutmeg. Pricier than gold, the kind of thing merchants brag about while you gnaw your bark-filled bread. Salt itself is valuable enough to lock away because it preserves food, one of the few ways to make anything last longer than a few days. So you spoon more pottage into your mouth, trying not to think about the rat that might have nibbled at the pot in the night. The bread scratches your gums, the ale leaves a sour aftertaste, and your body feels no stronger, no lighter, no better. But you've eaten. That's what matters. You're not nourished so much as reminded that you must endure. Breakfast in the Middle Ages isn't a moment of joy. It isn't even a pause. It's just another step in a long march of survival. You eat quickly, hunched over the fire, family crowded around, livestock grunting in the corner. There's no clinking of silverware, no polite chatter, no indulgence in flavor. Just chewing, swallowing, and getting on with it. And as you stand, Wiping your mouth with the back of your hand, you realize something else. You're already tired. You've only been awake for an hour, and yet your body groans under the weight of discomfort. Ahead lies a day of endless labor, aching joints, and skin that never truly feels clean. But before you face the fields, before you bend your spine to the soil, there's one more task. You need to get dressed. And in the Middle Ages, getting dressed means climbing into misery one layer at a time. You filled your stomach with pottage, gnawed on bread that could chip stone, and washed it all down with lukewarm beer. Now comes the next medieval ordeal, clothing yourself. Not that you have much choice in what to wear. Forget closets, wardrobes, or even a modest chest of drawers. You don't own an outfit for every occasion. You don't even own two. You have one set of clothes. One. You wake up in it. You work in it. You sleep in it. If it tears, you stitch it. If it stains, it stays stained. If it rots off your body, you hope someone takes pity and hands you their old tunic before the wind freezes you. Fashion in the Middle Ages isn't seasonal. It isn't personal. It's survival stitched together with thread and desperation. Your tunic is rough wool, cut to a shape that's more potato sack than tailored garment. It scratches, itches, and clings to sweat like a second, damp skin. Underneath, maybe you have a linen shift, if you're lucky. If your family could afford the extra fabric. If your mother had time to spin and sew one. If not, it's just you and the wool, rubbing, scratching, chafing until your skin is as raw as the bread you gnawed this morning. Underwear? Optional. In fact, for most peasants, non-existent. That means there's nothing between you and the itchy embrace of wool. No barrier between your body and the fabric that hasn't been washed since last harvest. No relief when the seams rub in awkward places. Just constant friction, constant irritation, and the vague awareness that your entire village is enduring the same misery. Your shoes, if you own any, are made of untreated leather, stiff and cracking, with seams that leak the moment you step in mud, which is always. They offer no arch support, no cushioning, no relief. It's like strapping wet bark to your feet and hoping for the best. Many peasants don't even bother. They go barefoot, trudging through fields, mud, dung, and sharp stones, their soles thickened and scarred. Cuts are common. Infections are constant. One wrong step in the muck, and you're limping for weeks. Washing your clothes isn't an easy option. Water has to be hauled from a stream or well, heated over a fire, and poured into a basin or tub. Soap, if you have any, is homemade from lye and ashes, harsh enough to burn your hands. Scrubbing a tunic takes hours, and then it has to dry in the weak sun, stiffening into something more like armor than fabric, which means most people don't wash their clothes often, or at all. The stains pile up, the odors settle in, and soon your garment smells like a cross between a compost heap and an old sheep pen. And yet, this is your best outfit, your only outfit. You don't complain because there's nothing else. Nobles might have wardrobes lined with velvets and linens, dyed in rich colors that scream of wealth. But you have brown or gray wool, the color of dirt, because dirt will be on it soon enough. Bright dyes are expensive, rare, and reserved for those who never have to work in the mud. Your clothes are meant to hide stains, not flaunt beauty. The seams of your tunic scratch at your shoulders. The collar sits uneven, rubbing your neck raw. Your sleeves are baggy at the elbows, but too tight at the wrists. It was stitched by hand, likely by your mother or grandmother, who was more concerned with making it last than making it fit. And it will last. It will last until the fabric rots, until the seams tear apart, until it can no longer hold itself together. And then you'll wear it a little longer, patching it, layering it, squeezing out every last day. Because cloth is valuable, precious even. No one throws it away. As you tug the wool into place, You feel the familiar crawl of lice at your scalp, fleas at your ankles, and bedbugs clinging to the seams. Everyone has them: peasants, priests, nobles. Entire kingdoms of parasites living for free on every body, feasting in silence. You scratch at your arm, then your waist, then the back of your neck. It doesn't help. The itching is part of life, as constant as hunger, as reliable as the church bell. Children scratch in class, priests scratch while preaching, kings scratch while holding court. The parasites don't discriminate. They belong to everyone. Your hair isn't brushed, your skin isn't clean, and your clothes aren't fresh. But you're dressed. Dressed for work, dressed for survival, dressed in the same misery as yesterday and tomorrow. You take a breath, shifting uncomfortably in the scratchy wool, and step toward the door. Outside waits the day, and the first challenge is already creeping across your face. Because while you might ignore the lice, the fleas, and the rash spreading across your arms, there's one thing you can't ignore for long: your teeth, or what's left of them. The first itch of the day is never the last. You scratch your arm, but it only sparks another itch at your neck. You rub your leg, and suddenly your scalp is on fire. You're not imagining it. Your body is alive with things that shouldn't be there: fleas, lice, mites, and bedbugs, all thriving in the seams of your clothes, in the straw of your mattress, and in the very pores of your skin. It isn't bad luck. It's normal. Everyone in your village, from the smallest child to the oldest elder, carries their own population of parasites. They are part of the fabric of life, as common as hunger or prayer. Children are born into it, scratching before they can walk. Adults accept it, scratching as they labor. Priests scratch under their vestments. Kings scratch beneath their crowns. It is universal, and it is inescapable. Your skin tells the story before your words do. Red welts crisscross your arms. Flea bites rise in clusters, each one a small, angry hill. Lice burrow into your scalp, laying eggs that hatch into new tormentors. Bedbugs leave trails of swollen bumps along your legs and back, souvenirs of the night's rest. And then there's scabies, a skin condition so common it's practically a medieval handshake, where mites burrow into your flesh and carve tunnels that itch and burn. You scratch, you rub, you claw, but relief never lasts. Nails break the skin, leaving scratches that bleed and scab, opening the door to infections. Dirt finds its way into the wounds, because everything is dirty: the bed, the floor, the water, your own hands. And without soap, without antiseptic, without even the idea of germs, the sores fester. Skin that once merely itched now throbs, oozes, and refuses to heal. Bathing could help, but bathing is a rare luxury. Water must be fetched, hauled, heated, poured into a wooden tub that may not even exist in your house. And soap? Soap is harsh, made from ashes and lye, burning the skin almost as much as it cleans. So most people bathe only a few times a year, often tied to holy festivals, when cleansing becomes a religious duty. The rest of the time, you live in your own oils, your own filth, your own microscopic kingdoms of pests. Even when you do wash, it's not always better. The rivers are contaminated, public bathhouses are crowded with strangers and disease, and shared tubs spread infections faster than they remove dirt. You climb out cleaner in theory, but crawling with whatever the last bather left behind. And so, many simply give up. You scratch, you smell, you endure. The itch isn't just physical, it's psychological. You sit in church and feel something crawling along your scalp. You're plowing a field when a flea bites the soft skin of your thigh. You're trying to sleep, and the bedbugs march across your body like an invading army. There is no peace. Only distraction, only discomfort, only the constant reminder that your skin is not your own. Clothing makes it worse. The wool rubs against your sores, trapping sweat and heat, creating the perfect greenhouse for infection. Parasites thrive in the seams, feeding while you labor. In winter, the cold air cracks your skin, leaving raw patches that sting and bleed. In summer, sweat mixes with grime, turning every crease of your body into a damp refuge for pests. The cycle never ends. And yet, you are not alone in this misery. Look around, and you'll see the same red bites on your neighbor's arms, the same raw patches on your sister's cheeks, the same constant scratching from your father as he leans on his hoe. The village is one great orchestra of itching, everyone scratching in rhythm, a symphony of irritation that never pauses. Sometimes, when an infestation grows too unbearable, people take drastic measures. Heads are shaved to combat lice, leaving scalps bare to the sun. Clothes are boiled in cauldrons, though the heat often damages the fabric. Flea traps are set by placing bowls of warm milk near the hearth, where insects drown in the liquid. But none of it is permanent. The pests always return, carried by animals, carried by neighbors, carried by the very air. You scratch again, nails raking against your skin, and sigh. There is no cure. There is no escape. This is simply life in the Middle Ages, itchy, raw, and perpetually uncomfortable. And yet, this is only the beginning of your body's daily suffering. Because if the skin brings misery from the outside, your mouth brings it from the inside. And when you open your lips to gnaw another bite of that stone-hard bread, you're reminded of a deeper, sharper pain. It isn't the fleas that will undo you today. It's your teeth. You tear into your bread and immediately regret it. The loaf is dense, baked hard enough to survive a siege, and every bite feels like a wager against your own mouth. Your teeth ache before you even chew, and when you do, the pain flashes like lightning through your jaw. You swallow quickly, not because you're hungry, but because lingering only makes the agony worse. Dental care, in the way you know it, doesn't exist. Toothbrushes, toothpaste, floss all centuries away. Instead, mouths are left to fend for themselves, and they fail spectacularly. From the time you're a child, your teeth are already yellowing, already rotting, already loosening in their sockets. By adulthood, you're missing more than a few, and those that remain are cracked, blackened, or riddled with holes. Bread doesn't help. It's full of grit, ground from millstones that shed tiny flakes of stone into the flour. Every bite of bread is like chewing sand, grinding enamel down to dust. Combine that with constant exposure to sugarless but acidic ale, and your mouth becomes a battlefield of decay. Cavities spread, gums swell, and infections fester. A toothache isn't just painful, it's dangerous. An abscessed tooth can poison the blood, swelling your jaw, fevering your body, and killing you slowly. And the smell. Imagine a whole village of people who never brushed, never rinsed, never flossed. Mouths sour with rot, breath heavy with infection. Conversations are clouded with the stench of decay, every smile revealing teeth that look more like crumbling tombstones than tools for eating. Children get used to it. Adults ignore it. Strangers endure it. But no one escapes it. When the pain becomes unbearable, there's only one option: extraction. No anesthetic, no numbing gel, no delicate dental chair. Just a strong hand, a sharp instrument, and the willpower to scream. Who performs it? Not a dentist. They don't exist. Instead, you turn to the barber surgeon. Barbers in the Middle Ages do more than trim hair. Their shops are centers of bloodletting, bone setting, minor surgeries, and yes, tooth pulling. You sit in a wooden chair, gripping the arms until your knuckles whiten, while the barber clamps a pair of crude iron pliers onto your tooth. He yanks. You scream. The tooth resists. He yanks again. The root tears, the gum splits, blood pours, and finally, with a sickening crunch, the tooth comes free. If you're lucky, you survive the infection that follows. If you're unlucky, the swelling spreads, choking your airway, fevering your body until the priest is called to anoint you. There are no fillings, no crowns, no dentures. Once a tooth is gone, it's gone. You chew on the other side until those teeth fail too. By the time you reach 40, if you live that long, you're lucky to have more than a few teeth left, and every meal is an exercise in endurance. Folk remedies abound, of course. People chew herbs to freshen their breath, rub ashes on their teeth to scrub away decay, or hold clove oil against an aching molar. Some swear by charms, muttered prayers, or the touch of a saint's relic to banish the pain. Others simply live with it, grimacing through every bite, because suffering is as common as air. You press your tongue against a sore spot, feeling the tender throb of an infected gum. The pain hums through your jaw, steady and cruel. You chew carefully, swallowing chunks of bread almost whole, washing them down with ale to dull the ache. Around you, your family does the same, each of them bearing their own private misery in silence. Children wince as they chew. Your father mutters under his breath. Your mother holds her cheek as though her jaw might split. Nobody is spared. The barber surgeon is waiting, his tools rusted, his hands steady, his shop marked with a red and white pole that signals his trade. You know you'll visit him one day. Everyone does. The only question is whether you'll leave lighter by a tooth or by your life. You wipe your mouth with the back of your hand, breath sour, jaw aching, and stomach unsettled. The meal has filled you, but it hasn't nourished you. It has reminded you, once again, that your own body is an enemy. And yet, there's no time to dwell on it. The bell tolls again. The fields await. Work doesn't pause for pain. So you stand, shoulders hunched, lips pressed tight against the throb in your jaw. You step outside into the muddy lane, scratch at your scalp, spit into the dirt, and face the next reality of medieval life, endless, back-breaking labor. The church bell fades, but it leaves behind no peace. Instead, it signals the start of a day that belongs not to you, but to the land and the Lord who owns it. You step out into the morning, your breath steaming in the chill, your hands already aching from yesterday's blisters that never had time to heal. The mud clings to your feet, and the smell of dung mixes with smoke drifting from nearby huts. Work is waiting, and it doesn't care how tired you are, or how badly your tooth aches, or that your knees sound like gravel grinding in a sack. You are a peasant, and peasants work. Always, the fields stretch out before you, gray and damp, broken by hedges and stunted trees. The soil is hard, packed, and unforgiving, but it is the heartbeat of your survival. Today you'll plow, dig, sow, weed, or harvest whatever the season demands. There are no weekends, no vacations, no days off for illness. The only real pause is Sunday, and even that comes with its own weight of prayer and obligations. Your tools are primitive: a wooden hoe, a dull sickle, a spade worn thin. If your family is lucky enough to have an ox, you harness it to a plow. If not, you become the ox yourself, bending, dragging, forcing the earth open with your own aching muscles. The work is monotonous, but never simple. Every furrow feels like resistance, the land grudgingly yielding food while demanding your strength in return. Children join in as soon as they can stand. At 5 or 6, they're sent into the fields to shoo away birds, to gather sticks, to carry water. There is no childhood, only smaller, weaker versions of adulthood. Their hands are raw, their feet muddy, their bellies hungry. By the time they're 10, they can swing a hoe nearly as well as you can. Their future is already written. Work, eat, sleep, repeat until their backs break like yours. And then there are the women. Their labor never ends. At dawn, they help in the fields, then return to cook, clean, spin wool, tend animals, nurse infants, and patch clothing so stiff it could almost stand on its own. They bear children and carry firewood, often in the same breath. When the harvest comes, They haul sacks as heavy as men, then turn around to make bread for everyone who worked beside them. Their strength is quiet, but relentless. The rhythm of the year governs everything. Spring is for plowing and planting, backbent from dawn till dusk. Summer is for weeding and guarding crops, sweltering in wool while insects chew at your skin. Autumn is harvest, the most brutal of all, when every hand must work without rest, because food for the whole year depends on a few frantic weeks. Winter is the cruelest season. Less field work, but endless hunger, endless cold, endless fear that the stores will run dry before the snow melts. And always, the Lord's share comes first. A portion of everything you grow belongs to him, by right of his ownership of the land. He may not know your name, but he knows your duty. You plow his fields, tend his animals, repair his roads, and give him your crops. Only what remains is yours and often. What remains isn't enough. Hunger gnaws at you, a constant background ache. Some winters, it's not just an ache. It's a death sentence. Accidents are common. A slip of the sickle, a fall from a wagon, a hoof to the chest. With no doctors, no medicine, and no rest, even small injuries can fester into death. A cut on your hand swells, turns red, spreads up your arm. A broken bone never sets right. A fever takes you out of the fields, and the family goes hungry. Sickness is weakness, and weakness is a luxury no one can afford. The monotony is broken only by moments of cruelty. A passing noble demanding labor. A tax collector tallying what you owe. A neighboring village raiding your fields. Violence lurks everywhere, but you keep your head down, keep your mouth shut, keep working. Work is survival. Work is all you have. By midday, your muscles burn, your back screams, and the sun beats down without mercy. You pause to drink warm ale from a jug, wiping sweat with your sleeve, only to return to the same patch of soil, the same endless cycle. The earth is heavy, your tools are crude, and your body is tired, but there is no choice. Stop, and you starve. As the sun dips low, your clothes stiff with sweat and dirt, your hands blistered anew, you trudge home. Work doesn't end at the fields. There's wood to chop, animals to feed, water to fetch, repairs to make. Darkness falls, but your day hasn't ended. It never really ends. In the Middle Ages, work isn't something you do. It's something that does you. Slowly, steadily, it wears you down until your body is as bent as the furrows you carve into the soil. You stagger back from the fields, thinking for a moment that the day's punishment is over. But even when your tools are laid aside, there's no escape from the elements. In the Middle Ages, the weather itself feels like an enemy. It decides whether you eat, whether you freeze, whether you live to see another harvest, and it rarely shows mercy. Let's begin with winter. Imagine a hut made of rough timber and mud, the walls full of cracks that let in the wind. Your roof is thatched straw, leaking whenever snow turns to sleet. You huddle inside wearing the same damp wool tunic you wore in the fields. A single fire smolders in the hearth, its smoke curling up into the rafters, stinging your eyes, leaving soot on your lungs. Firewood is precious. You never have enough. Gathering it from the Lord's forest is illegal, punishable by fines, beatings, even death. So you ration what you can, burning twigs, scraps, and dried dung when nothing else remains. The cold seeps in through the floor, through the cracks, through your bones. Your hands chap and split. Your toes ache constantly. The children whimper under thin blankets, their lips blue. You can't escape it by layering clothes. You only own one set. You can't escape it by piling into bed. The straw mattress is damp, the fleas relentless, the lice warm and thriving. Some winters, the frost creeps into your very marrow. Fingers blacken, toes shrivel, noses turn white with frostbite. But no one calls it frostbite. They call it bad luck. And then there's summer, which sounds like relief, but isn't. Step outside into the sun, and your hut transforms into a clay oven. The walls trap heat, the roof radiates it back down, and the air grows heavy, sticky, and foul. You sweat through your wool, but you can't shed the layers. Modesty demands you stay covered, and besides, bare skin is a target for insects. Flies swarm, buzzing around your face, crawling across your food, laying eggs in every crevice. Mosquitoes rise from stagnant water, biting until your arms and legs are raw. Gnats slip into your ears, your eyes, your mouth, until you're choking on air that feels alive. In the fields, the sun bears down, pitiless. There's no shade, no sunscreen, no hat unless you weave one out of straw yourself. Your skin burns, blisters, and peels. Your lips crack, your eyes water. Heat stroke is common, but no one calls it that. They say you've taken a bad turn when you collapse, dizzy and trembling, in the dirt. You either rise again, or you don't. The work doesn't stop. Spring and autumn bring their own tortures. Spring rains flood the fields, soaking everything in a cold, endless drizzle. Your hut leaks from every angle. Mud oozes through the floor, and you spend nights damp and shivering, praying for dry weather. In autumn, storms sweep through, winds tearing at roofs, rains battering crops that were meant to feed you through winter. A single hailstorm can wipe out a harvest. A single flood can carry away the grain. And through it all, disease lingers in the air. Wet winters breed coughs that never heal. Hot summers bring boils and rashes. Damp weather feeds mold that creeps into your food, your bedding, your lungs. There is no escape, no sealed windows, no central heating, no cool breeze from a fan. The weather owns you. Every season is a trial. Winter freezes you. Summer scorches you. Spring soaks you. Autumn breaks you. And through every month, your body bends beneath it, your spirit shrinking, your patience wearing thin. But you endure, because enduring is all there is. When you look to the sky, you don't hope for comfort. You hope for survival. Enough sun for crops, enough rain for growth, but not too much of either. Every cloud, every storm, every cold wind is a reminder that nature doesn't serve you. It judges you, and more often than not, it finds you wanting. So when the wind howls through the cracks in your hut, rattling the thatch, making the fire sputter, you close your eyes and pray. Not for warmth, not for coolness, not for comfort. Just for tomorrow to come without disaster. Because in the Middle Ages, the weather is more than background. It is a sentence, one you serve from birth until your final frost or fever. After hours in the fields, sweat clings to your skin, mixing with dirt until your tunic feels like a damp shroud. You long for something clean, something refreshing water to rinse your face, maybe even to drink. But in the Middle Ages, water is not your friend. It's your greatest gamble. The streams that lace the countryside sparkle in the morning light, but they are deceptive. Upstream, someone has emptied their chamber pot. A farmer has washed entrails from a slaughtered pig. A tanner has dumped vats of chemical-soaked waste from his workshop. By the time the water reaches your village, it's a cocktail of filth, carrying parasites, bacteria, and diseases nobody can name, but everyone fears. One gulp too many, and your stomach cramps, your body weakens, and within days, you may find yourself on the church floor, receiving last rites. So, you avoid water for drinking. You turn to ale, thin and warm, brewed weak so it won't cloud the mind, but strong enough to kill what lurks in the cup. Children drink it, elders drink it, priests drink it. Not because it's enjoyable, but because it's safer. Safer, but not clean. The sour tang of half-fermented barley stays on your tongue. The yeast sits heavy in your stomach, and your body never truly feels quenched. Bathing, too, is a rarity. On the rare occasions it happens, it's an ordeal. Fetching water from the stream is labor. Hauling it back in buckets is labor. heating it over the fire, pouring it into a wooden tub, then lowering yourself into the tepid, smoky liquid. That's a whole day's work. And when you're done, you're not refreshed. You're sore, raw from the harsh lye soap, and already aware that the water you bathed in has carried away your filth only to stew in the same tub, ready for the next family member to climb in. Public bathhouses exist in some towns, but they are far from the clean, tiled sanctuaries you might imagine. Picture a crowded room where dozens of bodies cram into steaming tubs, the air thick with sweat, smoke, and the stench of unwashed flesh. Men and women often bathe together, making these places as notorious for vice as for hygiene. Priests rail against them, calling them dens of sin. And they're not wrong. Disease spreads quickly here, leaping from skin to skin, water to water, until half the town coughs the same cough. Because of this, many people distrust bathing altogether. They believe water seeps into the body through the pores, carrying sickness with it. Better to stay dry, they reason, letting the grime form a kind of second skin, a protective crust against the invisible dangers of the world. The irony is cruel. The dirt that covers you may indeed protect you from nothing more than the suspicion of vanity. What about cleaning the essentials? Faces are splashed, hands wiped with rags, feet rinsed when the filth grows unbearable. But full immersion is rare, sometimes tied to holy days or special occasions. A bride might bathe before her wedding. A knight might bathe before a ceremony. But a peasant? Once or twice a year, if that. The smell, of course, is unforgettable. Entire villages reek of sweat, smoke, and manure. People become nose-blind to it, but outsiders notice immediately. Travelers write about the stench of towns, about the way the air clings to your clothes long after you've left. But within the village, it's invisible. It's normal. It's life. So you scratch at your scalp, wipe your face with a damp cloth, and call it good enough. The dirt remains. The lice remain. The smell remains. Cleanliness is not part of your world, and water is not your salvation. It is a danger lurking in every stream, hiding in every well. You can't escape it. You can only endure it. And as the sun sets, your body sticky with sweat, your mouth sour with ale, you realize something bleak. Thirst never really ends here. You drink, but you are never refreshed. You wash, but you are never clean. And tomorrow, it will all begin again. You've survived the itch, the toothache, the hunger, the filth, but sooner or later, something worse comes along. Sickness. A fever grips you, your stomach twists, your skin blooms with blotches that weren't there yesterday. You hope it will pass. Sometimes it does. Often it doesn't. And when it doesn't, you turn to medicine. But in the Middle Ages, medicine isn't healing. It's a gamble, a ritual, and often a torment. Doctors exist, in theory. Learned men who study ancient texts, who mutter in Latin, who carry themselves with the authority of knowledge. But their knowledge is centuries out of date, drawn from Aristotle, Galen, and other ancients who never laid eyes on the Black Death, who never dissected a human body, who believed disease was caused by an imbalance of humors. The humor's blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile were thought to rule your health. Too much of one, too little of another, and your body fell into chaos. A cough? Too much phlegm. Melancholy? Excess black bile? Fever? Too much blood. The solution was simple, if not sane. Restore balance by draining, purging, or adjusting your body until harmony returned. And so comes bloodletting. You sit in a chair, pale and weak, while a barber surgeon ties a strip of cloth around your arm. He pricks your vein with a dull knife, and the blood runs into a bowl. Sometimes he uses leeches, their slimy bodies clinging to your skin, drinking you until they swell and fall away. The theory says you'll feel lighter, healthier, more balanced. In reality, you're left dizzy, faint, and even weaker than before. If you are already sick, you may not survive the cure. Other treatments are no kinder. Cupping involves heated glass cups pressed against your skin, raising blisters meant to draw out bad humors. Laxatives purge your insides until you collapse. Emetics force you to vomit, leaving you trembling, gasping, clutching your stomach. Herbs are given, some soothing, some poisonous, all uncertain. Crushed beetles, powdered bones, even ground-up gemstones are prescribed, their cost higher than their value. Surgery, when it's attempted, is brutal. There is no anesthesia, only strong men to hold you down while a blade carves flesh. Knives aren't sterilized, saws aren't clean. Infection is expected, not prevented. A broken arm might be set with rough splints, but a deep wound is often a death sentence. Surgeons sear wounds with hot irons, not to disinfect, but to stop bleeding. The smell of burning flesh fills the room, and if you live through the pain, you may not live through the fever that follows. And then there's the plague, the great shadow of the medieval world. When it comes, doctors are helpless. They carry beaked masks stuffed with herbs, hoping to filter the bad air. They prescribe prayers, pilgrimages, penance. They tell the sick to confess their sins, to purge their souls, to prepare for the end. Whole towns are emptied, fields abandoned, graves dug in haste. Medicine fails, faith falters, and death claims its due. For the poor, there is no doctor. Your healer is the local wise woman, the midwife, the herbalist. She gathers plants, brews teas, mixes poultices. Some of her remedies: work willow bark eases pain, garlic fights infection. But without knowledge of germs, success is as much luck as skill. And if her success is too great, suspicion rises. Whispers of witchcraft spread, and what once was healing becomes a crime. You lie on your straw bed, sweating through your wool, clutching your belly, while your family debates. Call the priest, call the barber, call the herbalist. All choices come with risk, and none with certainty. If you survive, it is called a miracle. If you die, it is called God's will. Either way, medicine takes no credit and bears no blame. In the Middle Ages, illness is not something you fight. It is something you endure. And whether you live or die depends less on remedies than on fortune. The humors may rule your body, but fate rules your life. After a day in the fields, your back screams, your skin burns, and your stomach is a hollow drum. You stagger back into your hut with the desperate hope that dinner will bring relief. But in the Middle Ages, dinner isn't comfort. Dinner is another trial. The centerpiece of the evening meal is, once again, pottage. That eternal stew bubbles in the pot, thickened by whatever scraps her family has scraped together. Maybe it's a little barley, maybe it's cabbage gone limp, maybe a carrot or two if the garden's been kind. The pot has been simmering for weeks, a rolling inheritance of meals past, replenished but never replaced. You taste onions from last week, turnips from yesterday, and the faint sour tang of ingredients that overstayed their welcome. The stew is alive in ways you don't want to think about. Meat, when it appears, is a rare spectacle. A scrap of pork, a sliver of mutton, the occasional rabbit if the snares were kind. But meat is expensive, and much of it is preserved poorly. Salting keeps it from rotting outright, but never quite saves it from spoiling. The flesh is tough, briny, and streaked with gristle. You chew and chew, your aching teeth protesting, your stomach questioning whether it should even accept this offering. Sometimes the meat is so far gone that spices are added to disguise the smell, except spices are luxuries. So more often, you just hold your breath and hope for the best. Fish is more common, especially for those near rivers or coasts. But fish, too, spoils quickly. Pickling, smoking, or salting extends its life, but not its taste. The result is a slab of flesh, so pungent you can smell it from across the room. A food that tastes like the sea died twice. You choke it down anyway, because hunger doesn't argue. Bread returns to the table, hard as ever, often crawling with surprises. Grain stores are breeding grounds for pests, and it's not uncommon to find weevils baked into the loaf. You brush them away or you don't. Protein is protein. The bread crumbles into your lap, gritty with millstone dust, leaving your gums raw and your stomach heavy. Dairy appears in the form of cheese, though cheese might be generous. Fresh cheese spoils fast, souring in days. Hard cheese lasts longer, but it's often so strong it makes your eyes water. Butter exists, but it's rare, saved for feast days or sold at market. Milk itself is a risk. Without refrigeration, it sours quickly, curdling into something thick and questionable. Many drink it anyway. Many regret it afterward. Vegetables are plentiful in theory, but limited in variety. Cabbage, leeks, onions, peas, these are the staples. Tomatoes, potatoes, corn. They won't arrive in Europe for centuries. The diet is heavy, repetitive, and lacking in vitamins. Scurvy gnaws at gums in winter. Rickets bends bones. Malnutrition weakens bodies, making every cough more dangerous, every fever more likely to end in death. And then there's food safety, or rather, the lack of it. No refrigeration, no knowledge of bacteria, no sense of expiration. If it looks edible, you eat it. If it smells strange, you shrug. If it tastes odd, you keep chewing. Because the choice isn't between fresh and spoiled. It's between spoiled and nothing. Dinner is eaten from wooden bowls, shared between family members, with spoons that may or may not be clean. The fire smokes, the hut stinks, the children whine, and the dog hovers hopefully at your feet. There is no tablecloth, no ceremony, no pleasure. Just food is fuel. Food is survival. Food is one more task in the endless cycle of the day. You swallow the last of your pottage, wipe your mouth on your sleeve, and push away the bowl. Your stomach is full, but uneasy. Was that meat fresh? Was the grain clean? Did the cabbage hide mold? You'll find out in the morning or in the middle of the night when your belly turns traitor. In the Middle Ages, food keeps you alive, but it can just as easily kill you. You sit back, staring into the dying fire, and realize something unsettling. You're not nourished. You're barely maintained, a machine running on scraps, your body always on the edge of collapse. Tomorrow, you'll wake hungry again, and the cycle will repeat. Dinner doesn't end the day's suffering. It just buys you enough strength to face the next. The stew is gone, the bread is chewed, the fire is sputtering low. But even here, in the dim quiet of your hut, there is another presence shaping your life. Bigger than hunger, bigger than weather, bigger even than the Lord who claims your fields. It is the church. Not just a building, not just a priest, but an entire world of rules, rituals, and expectations that presses down on every moment of your day. From the moment you wake to the toll of the bell, religion is there, dictating when you rise, when you pray, when you rest, and when you confess. The calendar isn't yours. It belongs to saints, to feast days, to holy seasons. Lent tells you what you can't eat. Advent tells you how to prepare. Easter and Christmas mark not just celebrations, but entire shifts in how you live. Even the hours of the day are carved into sacred chunks: matins, lauds, prime, terce, sext, none, vespers, compline. Bells echo across the land, dragging you from your bed, calling you from your fields, reminding you that you are never your own master. The village church is the center of your world. Its spire looms above the cluster of huts, a constant reminder of heaven above and judgment below. Inside, the air is thick with incense, the walls painted with saints, demons, and scenes of eternal punishment. You can't read, but the pictures tell the story plainly. Live rightly, or burn forever. For people who live every day in mud, disease, and hunger, the threat of hell isn't abstract, it's terrifyingly believable. The priest holds enormous power. He hears your confessions, absolves your sins, and reminds you of your place in the cosmic order. He is literate, educated, closer to God than you could ever hope to be. His words decide when you marry, how you bury your dead, whether your newborn is welcomed into the faith. He tells you what's a sin, what's permitted, what's demanded. And when he speaks of obedience to God, to the saints, to the Lord of the manor, you listen. Because disobedience risks not only punishment on earth, but eternal torment after death. Tithes are demanded. 1/10 of your harvest, your animals, your earnings, handed over to the church. Even when your family is starving, even when your fields have failed, the tithe is due. Refuse, and you risk excommunication, cutting you off from the sacraments, from salvation, from the community itself. In a world where survival depends on your neighbors, being cast out by the church is as good as a death sentence. Superstition bleeds into every corner of life. A sick child? Perhaps God is testing you. A failed harvest? Perhaps a sin went unconfessed. Lightning strikes your hut? Perhaps the devil has been given an opening. Charms, relics, holy water, all are clung to desperately. Half faith, half fear. You cross yourself before leaving the house. You mutter prayers while working in the fields. You touch the doorway with reverence when you return. Religion isn't something you practice. It's something you breathe. Even leisure is shaped by the church. Feast days bring small breaks from labor, but also long hours in prayer, fasting, and sermons. Marriage is a sacrament, not a choice. Festivals are tied to saints, their parades and processions blending joy with solemnity. Death itself is owned by the church. A priest must bless the body, prayers must be said, masses sung. Without these rites, the soul wanders, trapped between worlds. And always, hanging over you, is the promise of judgment. Heaven glimmers faintly, a distant hope, while hell yawns vividly, painted on church walls, carved into sermons, whispered into your ear each week. Fire, demons, endless torment, all waiting for the sinner. And since sin is everywhere, in lust, in hunger, in laziness, in doubt, you are never certain you've escaped it. The church isn't just belief, it's control. It shapes your thoughts, your fears, your labor, your family. It blesses your obedience, sanctifies your suffering, explains away your misery as divine will. And you accept it, because there is no alternative. No other narrative, no other promise, no other power strong enough to rival it. As you kneel on the cold floor of the church, muttering words you don't fully understand, the incense stings your nose, and the priest's voice echoes above you. You bow your head, cross yourself, and rise again, heavier with rules but lighter with hope. Maybe tomorrow will be better. Maybe your sins are forgiven. Maybe heaven waits beyond the hunger and filth. But tonight, back in your hut, with your belly aching and your children scratching at fleas, heaven feels far away. What feels close is the weight of rules, the demand for obedience, and the sense that your life is not your own. If you are a woman in the Middle Ages, your life is not your own. From the moment you are born, your role is set, your duties prescribed, your worth measured not in freedom or ambition, but in service, survival, and sacrifice. You are a daughter, then a wife, then a mother, if you live long enough to see all three. Every stage is marked by hardship. As a girl, you begin working almost as soon as you can walk. You fetch water from the well, carry firewood, gather herbs, watch the smaller children. You learn to spin, to weave, to mend. Childhood, if it exists at all, is short and fragile. There are no dolls, no schooling, no time for idle play. By 7 or 8, your hands are calloused, your back already bending under the strain of endless chores. Marriage doesn't wait for adulthood. Families arrange unions early, often by the time a girl is 12 or 13. Your choice doesn't matter. The union is about land, alliances, survival. Love is rarely part of the conversation. You are handed from father to husband like property, and in many ways, that is exactly what you are. A dowry seals the deal. Goods, livestock, sometimes a patch of land exchanged as if you yourself were a transaction. Once married, your body is no longer yours. It belongs to your husband, to your family, to the community. Children are expected, demanded, prayed for. You bear them one after another, your body rarely given time to heal. Each pregnancy carries the risk of death, yours or the child's. Midwives assist, but they have no medicine, no sterile instruments, no knowledge of infection. Childbirth is agony, and for many women, it is the end. Cemeteries fill with young mothers, their lives cut short by the very act of giving life. Even survival is no guarantee of peace. You must nurse infants, cook meals, tend fields, weave cloth, and manage a household. Your day begins before dawn and ends long after dark. Your hands always busy, your body always tired. There is no recognition, no gratitude, only the expectation that you will endure. When food is scarce, you eat last. When sickness comes, you nurse others first. When men speak, you listen. When the church preaches obedience, it is your obedience that is most demanded. And then there is the weight of suspicion. A man who knows herbs is wise. A woman who knows them is a witch. A man who heals is skilled. A woman who heals is dangerous. Women who step outside the narrow confines of obedience and service risk gossip, accusations, trials. Midwives and herbalists, essential to their communities, walk a razor's edge. Their knowledge keeps children alive, but if a child dies despite their efforts, blame falls swiftly, sometimes fatally. Noble women live differently, but not easier. Their lives are confined by walls and duty. Their marriage is arranged for politics rather than love. They may command servants, but they themselves are commanded by fathers, husbands, and priests. Their bodies are bargaining chips, their wombs vessels for dynasties. Silks and jewels cannot soften the reality. Power is borrowed, fragile, conditional. For peasant women, life is harsher still. You labor in the fields beside men, then return home to cook, clean, and care for children. Your hands are never empty if not hauling baskets. They are spinning wool, if not spinning. They are kneading dough, if not kneading, they are tending fires. And through it all, you endure hunger, cold, sickness, and childbirth with little complaint, because complaint changes nothing. Your voice is rarely heard in public, your opinions rarely valued. The church preaches that you are weaker, more sinful, more easily swayed by temptation. Eve's legacy is hung around your neck, a reminder that you are to obey, to submit, to endure. And so you do, because there is no alternative. At night, you lie on your straw mattress, your body aching, your belly hollow, your skin crawling with fleas. Your husband snores beside you, your children cough in the dark, and you stare at the rafters above. Tomorrow will be the same. The chores will return, the hunger will return, the danger of childbirth will hover like a shadow. There is no escape, only endurance. And yet, despite it all, women keep households alive, keep children alive, keep villages alive. Their labor is invisible, uncelebrated, taken for granted, but without it, nothing would endure. The Middle Ages run on the backs of women, though the history books rarely say so. Life in the Middle Ages is already cruel enough, with hunger, disease, and weather conspiring against you. But even if you survive those, there is another danger always looming: violence. It comes from your neighbors, from strangers, from your Lord, from the state, from the church. And when it comes, it is merciless. Villages are not peaceful havens. Disputes flare easily, fueled by hunger, ale, or jealousy. A stolen chicken, an insult shouted at the alehouse, a line of boundary stones moved after dark, any of these can spiral into blows. Knives flash, fists fly, clubs crash. A quarrel at dusk can leave a man bleeding in the mud by dawn. Justice, when it comes, is rarely fair. Theft is everywhere. Food, firewood, livestock, anything that might mean survival is worth stealing. But if you are caught, punishment is swift and brutal. Stocks in the village square humiliate you, locking your head and hands while children pelt you with rotten vegetables and dough. Whipping strips flesh from your back, leaving scars for life. Branding marks your crime permanently, earned into your skin with iron. For repeat offenses, or crimes considered serious, the rope waits. Hanging isn't rare, it's routine. A body swinging from the gallows is as common a sight as a plow in the field. The law is not kind, and it is not consistent. Nobles who kill in a drunken rage may pay a fine. Peasants who steal a loaf of bread may lose a hand. The balance of justice is tilted sharply in favor of wealth, power, and connections. For you, a peasant, mercy is rare. The law is less about fairness and more about keeping order, keeping fear alive, keeping you obedient. Then there are the trials. Not just trials of evidence, but trials of ordeal. If you are accused of theft, witchcraft, or blasphemy, you may be forced to prove your innocence by surviving a test that no one could call fair. Perhaps you'll plunge your hand into boiling water to retrieve a stone, your innocence declared if the burns heal clean. Or you may be bound and thrown into a river. If you float, you are guilty, rejected by the water. If you sink, you are innocent, but you may not live long enough to enjoy the verdict. Witchcraft accusations are particularly cruel, and though they grow harsher in later centuries, the seeds are already here. A woman with knowledge of herbs, a healer whose remedies fail, a neighbor who speaks out of turn any of them can be branded suspicious. Whispers spread, the priest nods gravely, and suddenly she stands before a crowd, facing judgment she cannot escape. Sometimes the punishment is banishment. Sometimes it is fire. Violence also comes from above, in the form of war. When lords quarrel, it is the peasants who pay. Soldiers march through villages, seizing food, trampling crops, earning huts. Women are not spared. Children are not spared. The elderly are not spared. Armies move like storms, leaving wreckage behind. And when they go, hunger follows, because the fields are empty and the stores are gone. Punishments are not just physical, they are psychological. Fear itself becomes a weapon. The gallows in the square remind you of consequences. The stocks humiliate you in front of neighbors. The church terrifies you with visions of hell. Every day, you live with the knowledge that a single mistake, a single accusation, a single unlucky night could see your life unravel. In this world, violence is not an interruption of life. It is part of life. Disputes, theft, punishment, war, they are woven into the rhythm of existence. You expect them, you fear them, and when they come, you endure them. Because what else can you do? The law is not yours to shape. The sword is not yours to wield. The church is not yours to question. You are a body in the crowd, a name on the tithe list, a soul reminded weekly of eternal fire. So you lower your head, keep your hands busy, keep your voice quiet. Not because you believe you are safe, but because you know you are not. Violence can come at any moment. And when it does, there will be no one to save you. If there is one certainty in the Middle Ages, it is death. It is not hidden behind hospital curtains, not softened by medicine, not postponed by years of treatment. It walks beside you from birth to burial, whispering in every cough, every fever, every failed harvest. Death is not an intruder in this world. It is a constant neighbor. Childhood itself is a gamble. Nearly half of all children die before their 5th birthday. A simple fever, a bad cough, a night of diarrhea, any of these can carry a child away. Mothers hold infants knowing that the odds are against them, baptizing babies within days of birth, sometimes within hours, because they may not live long enough to wait for Sunday Mass. Tiny graves line churchyards, small mounds of earth that remind every parent that joy is fragile, fleeting, and often short-lived. Adults fare little better. Life expectancy hovers in the 30s, not because old age is impossible, but because reaching it is rare. The body bends quickly under hunger, labor, and disease. A broken bone may never heal. An infected cut can become fatal. A toothache can swell into a fever that kills within days. You live with the knowledge that your body is always a single misstep away from collapse. Plague is the darkest shadow of all. When it comes, it moves fast, sweeping through towns and villages like fire through dry wood. Buboes swell, black blotches spread, fevers burn, lungs choke. Whole families vanish within a week. Entire streets are emptied, carts creak through towns piled with corpses. Priests mutter prayers over bodies too numerous to bury. The air itself feels poisoned, and no one understands why. Was it the stars? God's punishment? Bad air rising from the ground? No one knows, and no cure exists. But plague is only one of many killers. Famine strikes when harvests fail, leaving bellies hollow and ribs sharp beneath skin. People eat bark, weeds, even dirt to fill the emptiness. Some abandon children they cannot feed. Some starve quietly in their huts, too weak to rise. War brings fire and sword, soldiers cutting down not just enemies, but anyone in their path. Villages burn, crops trampled, women brutalized, children scattered. The survivors are left with ashes, hunger, and scars that never fade. And then there is the church, reminding you constantly of the death that waits after death. Hell is painted on the walls in vivid detail. Flames, demons, endless torment. Heaven is promised, but always distant, always uncertain. Every sin you confess, every tithe you pay, every prayer you mutter is a hedge against damnation. But certainty never comes. You live not just with fear of dying, but with fear of what lies beyond. Burial itself is no comfort. Graves are shallow, bodies packed close in crowded churchyards. In famine years and plague years, the earth cannot keep up with the dead. Pits are dug, filled with bodies laid side by side, nameless, faceless, unremembered. The smell of decay lingers in the air, a reminder that your turn is coming. And yet, despite the constant presence of death, life goes on. People laugh, work, marry, have children, sing songs at festivals. They celebrate small joys because there is no guarantee of tomorrow. Death's nearness sharpens the moments of life, even as it steals so many away. You sit in the dim firelight, listening to your children cough, your stomach growl, your joints ache. Outside, the church bell tolls, marking the end of another day. You cross yourself before lying down, not certain you'll wake, but knowing you must try to sleep anyway. Because in the Middle Ages, every night might be your last, and every morning is a fragile miracle. When people today think of the Middle Ages, they often picture something out of a storybook. Knights in shining armor, ladies in flowing gowns, banquets in candlelit halls, troubadours singing gentle songs beneath starry skies. It's a world painted in bright colors, softened by time, polished by legend. But that vision is a myth, a dream draped over centuries of misery. The truth is darker, dirtier, and far less romantic. Knights did exist, but they were few, and they were not the gallant champions of fairy tales. They were soldiers, brutal and pragmatic, trained to kill. Their armor gleamed only for a short while, before mud and blood caked it. They fought not for chivalry, but for land, power, and profit. And when their swords weren't drawn against enemies, they were often turned against peasants who resisted. villages that faltered in their taxes, or towns unlucky enough to stand in their way. Castles, too, inspire dreams of majesty, with soaring towers and feasts laid out in glittering halls. But most castles were cold, damp fortresses, designed for defense, not comfort. The walls dripped with moisture, fires smoked in the halls, and rushes on the floors grew foul with filth. Rats scurried freely, lice thrived in every corner, and the stench of waste was as strong within the walls as outside them. Feasts were rare occasions, reserved for lords and their guests. For most, life inside the castle was work, not revelry. Servants slaved in the kitchens, guards froze on the ramparts, and peasants who looked up at the towers from below did so with no thought of envy, only the weary recognition that it was another world, one they would never enter. The myth of romance, the fair maiden, the courtly knight, the songs of love was the creation of poets and nobles, a story told to distract from the grind of reality. For the average person, love was not a matter of poetry. It was survival. Marriages were arranged, dowries exchanged, alliances forged. Women were rarely asked their opinion, and men rarely had the freedom to marry outside the expectations of family and community. Courtly love may have existed in songs, but in the villages, marriage meant work, children, and hardship. The idea of merriment, the dances around maypoles, the laughter of festivals, the songs of minstrels did exist, but they were small, fleeting breaks in an ocean of toil. A festival might give you a day of music and food, but the next morning the hunger returned, the blisters reopened, the burdens resumed. Celebration in the Middle Ages wasn't proof of a joyful life. It was a moment stolen from misery, a desperate act of defiance against despair. Even religion, often imagined as a source of hope and beauty, was shadowed by fear. Cathedrals soared, but peasants who gazed at them lived in huts. Hymns rose, but sermons warned constantly of hellfire. Faith brought comfort, yes, but it also brought chains of duty, tithes, and obedience. Heaven was promised, but always at the end of suffering. So why has the myth survived? Because history is often written by those who lived at the top, not those who struggled at the bottom. Nobles wrote the poems, monks copied the manuscripts, artists painted the frescoes. Their stories shaped the memory of the age, while the voices of peasants, millions of them, are lost in silence. What remains are fragments, records of taxes, accounts of punishments, scraps of letters. From these, the true picture emerges, stark and unforgiving. The Middle Ages were not golden. They were gray with mud, red with blood, black with smoke. They were loud with cries of pain, heavy with the weight of hunger, sharp with the stench of decay. For every knight who polished his sword, there were thousands of peasants who bent their backs beneath the plow. For every banquet table groaning with roasted meats, there were countless families scraping the bottom of the pottage pot, hoping for one more meal. The myth comforts us. It makes the past seem noble, romantic, adventurous. But if you stood there, barefoot in the mud, scratching lice from your scalp, shivering under a leaking roof, you would not see romance. You would see survival. And survival was all there was. So far, the picture has been bleak. Hunger, filth, violence, disease, and death at every turn. And that was the truth for most people in the Middle Ages. Yet even in this landscape of suffering, humanity found ways to survive, not only in body, but in spirit. There were small moments, fragile, fleeting, that gave life just enough meaning to carry on. Take the family hearth. Yes, the fire smoked and sputtered. Yes, the hut leaked and stank, but around the hearth, people gathered. They shared bowls of pottage, told stories, sang songs passed down through generations. A child might curl into a mother's lap. A father might hum a tune learned from his own parents. The warmth was imperfect, but it was warmth. The light was dim, but it was light. Festivals, too, brought bursts of color into the gray. Holy days were many, sometimes as many as 100 scattered across the year. They didn't erase suffering, but they gave respite. Villages decorated with flowers in spring, lit bonfires in summer, danced beneath the harvest moon in autumn. There were plays in churchyards, music in the streets, games that made children laugh. For one day, hunger was forgotten, and joy felt almost real. Music and storytelling bound communities together. The sound of a fiddle, the beat of a drum, the lilt of a ballad, they lifted spirits even in the darkest winters. Stories carried lessons, humor, warnings. Tales of Robin Hood, of saints and miracles, of tricksters and fools. They reminded people that the world was bigger than their hut, that laughter was still possible, that hope could sneak in through the cracks. Even work, harsh as it was, carried its own rhythm of fellowship. In the fields, people sang to keep pace, joked to lighten the load, shared bread and ale during brief rests. A neighbor helped another with planting, and debts were remembered in kindness, not coin. In a world that gave nothing freely, people gave what they could to each other. Children, despite high mortality, still played. They chased each other through muddy lanes, carved toys from sticks, threw stones at imaginary foes. Their laughter echoed across villages, proof that innocence could survive even here, if only for a little while. Love existed too, not always the courtly kind sung by troubadours, but real, simple affection. A hand held, a glance across the hearth, a shared smile during a festival dance. Couples carved initials into tree bark, mothers whispered lullabies to newborns, fathers built cradles from scraps of wood. In small gestures, humanity shone stubbornly, defiantly, against the darkness. Faith, though twisted with fear, also carried comfort. Prayers offered a sense of order, of purpose, of connection to something greater. The church bell that dragged you from bed also reminded you that you weren't alone, that others were praying, others were enduring, others were hoping for the same salvation. In shared ritual, there was strength. And sometimes, people found beauty in the very world that oppressed them. A sunrise over frosted fields, the shimmer of dew on barley stalks, the hush of snow falling on a silent night. These were moments no lord could tax, no priest could claim, no sickness could erase. Brief glimpses of peace in a life otherwise spent in struggle. The Middle Ages were brutal, yes, but they were also human. And in the cracks of misery, people planted seeds of laughter, kindness, and hope. Not because they were blind to suffering, but because without those moments, life would be unbearable. The resilience of humanity, the refusal to let despair be the only story, is what carried people forward, generation after generation. And it is that resilience, more than castles or kings, more than wars or plagues, that truly defines the age. By now, you've survived one full day in the Middle Ages, if we can even call it survival. You've woken in a bed of bugs, trudged through mud, and dung-eaten food that might poison you worked, until your body screamed, and ended the day with nothing more than aching limbs, an empty stomach, and the vague hope that tomorrow would not bring plague famine, or violence to your door. That was life for the vast majority of people, a grinding cycle of labor, scarcity, and fear. And yet, here you are, in your own bed, in the quiet of your own room, listening safely to this story. That contrast is worth pausing over, because it reminds us how astonishingly different our world has become. Think about the water in your glass. Clear, cold, safe. No parasites, no stench, no gamble with every sip. It flows freely from the tap, without the need for boiling or fermenting. It is perhaps the simplest, yet most profound privilege of the modern age. Think about the bed you lie on. Clean sheets, soft pillows, warmth at the touch of a switch. No fleas, no lice, no rotting straw. Privacy, comfort, and silence luxuries, so ordinary now that we barely notice them. To a medieval peasant, your bed alone would have seemed like a throne. Think about food. Even the simplest meal in our world would be a banquet to them. Bread that doesn't break teeth, fruit in every season, meat that hasn't spoiled, coffee in the morning, tea at night, spices from every corner of the globe. Food not as survival alone, but as pleasure. Think about health. A scratch no longer threatens your life. A toothache doesn't spiral into fever. A broken bone can be set, an infection treated, a birth made safer with medicine and care. The smallest conveniences, painkillers, antiseptic, vaccines would have seemed miraculous. And think about choice. In the Middle Ages, your path was set from birth. Peasant, farmer, laborer, serf. Upward mobility was nearly impossible. Today, though life is not without struggle, you can move, learn, travel, change. You are not bound by land, by birth, by a Lord's will. Freedom, too, is a modern miracle. Perhaps most of all, think about time. For medieval people, every day was survival. For us, days can be more. They can be art, rest, discovery, joy. Time to learn, time to dream, time to simply exist without fear of famine at the door. Time that is not borrowed but truly ours. The Middle Ages were cruel, but they were real. They shaped our ancestors, and through them, us. They remind us how much we endure, how much we adapt, how much we hope. And as we look back at that world of shadows, what lingers most is not just the misery, but the resilience, the quiet defiance of people who laughed and loved even when the world gave them little reason. So tonight, as you drift into sleep, let gratitude rest with you. Gratitude for clean water, for warm rooms, for food and medicine, for choice and freedom, for time itself. Gratitude for the chance to live not in survival alone, but in comfort and possibility. The Middle Ages remind us how fragile life can be. The modern world reminds us how precious it is. And so ends your day in the Middle Ages. You woke to fleas, stumbled through mud, ate bread that could break your teeth, worked until your body ached, prayed because you feared what tomorrow might bring, and somehow found enough laughter, music, and faith to endure. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't heroic. It was survival. And yet, it's thanks to those who endured that world that we are here in ours. As you lie in your bed tonight, let that contrast sink in. The clean water you drink, the food on your table, the medicine waiting in your cabinet, the warmth of your blankets, these are privileges that countless generations never knew. Where they struggled, you can rest. Where they feared, you can feel safe. Their hardship became the foundation of your comfort. So as your eyes grow heavy, take a deep breath. Let gratitude wrap around you like a second blanket. Let the noise of the medieval world fade away, the lice, the pottage, the cold wind rattling the hut. You are here, in the modern world, safe and warm, and it is time now to rest. Before you drift off completely, I'd like to thank you for joining me tonight. If you enjoyed this journey, be sure to subscribe so you'll always have another story waiting when you need it. And leave a comment below. Tell me where you're re-listening from and what time it is for you right now. It's always a joy to see how many of us, scattered across the world, find connection through these quiet hours of history. Now close your eyes, let your breathing slow, and let sleep take you gently. The Middle Ages are behind you. The night is yours. Good night.